Oh, back with you live. So fantastic. With me is Captain Robert Mean. Did I get that right?
Yeah, me in. Let me in. Yeah.
Let me in? Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Rob, thank you very much, and thank you for serving. So a little bit different to have military personnel on in the morning. But you know what? Everyone's got a great story to share, and I think sometimes coming into Christmas season, we've got a lot of our friends and family serving overseas and doing whatever they're doing for whatever the cause Canada has on the go. So it's nice to be able to bring some people in and do a little bit of sharing. And I found out something really interesting about Rob, and that was the fact that he is in his 50s, looking great, looking lean, looking absolutely fantastic. But that means, though, that you probably got a little bit of a late start. So what drove you into this area, and what inspired you to say, you know what, I want to be able to serve Canada on a different level?
Well, that's a good question. You know what? I actually started in the military in 1988. I did the Calgary Highlanders for a few years when I was just getting ready to start, just started university. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that. But it was just such a far drive. I didn't know what artillery was. I knew they were in Lethbridge. And I knew it involved a lot of math. And I'm a history guy. I don't want to do math. That would be horrible.
Math and artillery.
Oh,
Isn't there an app for that on your phone now?
Yeah, there is actually, but
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell, yeah, but it's you have to use the official app.
Oh, gotcha.
But if you so I served, but I didn't get to serve much, and the traveling, it was just difficult. And the 80s were pretty tough for reservists for pay and benefits and stuff. So I said I can't do this, so I quit. But I always regretted it. Mm-hmm. And then when Afghanistan was getting really started, and you started seeing all these young men coming home and young women coming home, injured, killed, and I thought, here I am. At the time I was 39, and I'm fit. I just stopped fighting in mixed martial arts and kickboxing, and I'm reasonably fit, reasonably intelligent. I got my university degree. I had a good job, government of Alberta, and historic sites and museums, and so I've got a good job. It gives me a good leave package, especially for military service, and I'm fit. Why don't I do it? And I talked it over with the wife, and I said, this is something I need, because I told my wife when we got married, I don't know what I'm going to be doing when we got married and together. I just finished fighting. I said, I don't know what my next thing is, but whatever it is, it's going to be there, and I need it. I need those challenges. And she agreed, and when I talked about the military, she said, oh, that sounds nice. You're going to still live in Lethbridge? Yeah. And I'll go away on courses and things, she said. That's great. And what about Afghanistan? Well, I'd like to serve in Afghanistan if I can. She didn't like that idea, but she thought, well, by the time you get done your training, it'll never happen. She was right. Yeah. It takes so long. The conflict there, our involvement in that conflict was pretty much finished by the time I was fully trained and really, truly useful. But the point is, though, that I got in, and we immediately found out, whoa, it's a little bit more than just a little part-time job. It's actually a pretty big ask for people for time and their emotional commitment and their family's commitment. Yeah. And but it was a challenge I was looking for. Because you get, and I think we all experience this in our lives. We get into our careers, and often we had no idea that's what we're going to do in our life. That's where we ended up there, and we found that opportunity, and we took it, and that's a good thing. I'm not looking at it. If you would have told me as a young man, Rob, you're going to work at a museum. That's going to be your job. When you're going to work in a museum, and you're going to love it. There's no way that's true. There's no way that's possible. But that's what happened. So, wow, I'm so fortunate that I was given that opportunity. So I worked there as a full-time job, but it doesn't take long to become a master of your little domain. You see no more real challenges. I've seen every question that comes up. We get something new, but it's pretty much the same as other things. It's slightly different. And so you become really comfortable, and anyone can ask you any question, and you pretty much know the answer. But we need more than that. Humans need a challenge, and that's what the Army's given me. Because the Army is non-stop improvement. You could say, well, I'm done. I'm not going to do any more. I'm just going to stick with this job. But there is a great need in the military for people with the next set of qualifications to make sure that they can do the next bigger job.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was joking around when I said you talked about, military ordnance and whatever. Well, there's an app for that. Yeah. And I stopped and I thought, wait a minute. You're in your 50s. And you look at and my big thing as a clinical hypnotherapist and as somebody who deals in human perception and how we evolve and change, there are a lot of people that may have been in the military, Army, Navy, whatever, for 30 years and have served their country very well. Show them an app, they're like, I know how to text on my phone. Yeah. How do you make that transition, and how does the armed forces actually deal with that?
That's a good question. One of the things that I found on my course, in military courses, you get, especially for officers, it's a fire hose. And it is a gigantic fire hose of information. And you're expected to gain a basics of competency within a short amount of time. And the consequences for failure aren't just a failed PO or a test. The consequences potentially of failure is a life and death error. You know, you accidentally shot around somebody you shouldn't have.
Friendly fire.
Friendly fire, or in artillery, we're not like the infantry where we fire blanks with a laser. The beep beep shoots a laser to a little sensor pad that tells you you've shot and killed your opponent, and you shoot blanks. They sometimes do live fire stands where they'll have targets that they advance and they move and they clear a room with live bullets. That's a high level of training for them. For artillery, even reservists, part-time soldiers, we go out with real bombs and we shoot at real targets over the head of our own friendly forces, and we've got to have competence. We have to be competent. We have to be competent to know that the gun is in the right place. We have to know where we're pointed. We have to understand the mathematics of where that round is going to land. And so there's a lot of pressure on a potential error. And so when you get this fire hose of information, and then on top of it, as a commissioned officer, you are the Queen's representative, the government's representative, to make a good decision. And you are the one legally responsible for every bullet that's dropped. And if one goes astray, it's me.
That's you, regardless.
I'm in the chair. Regardless of what happens, I'm the guy that's responsible.
But as captain, you have a huge ladder of subordinates that you're responsible for.
I'm responsible for. And they are, for the most part, non-commissioned officers, meaning they are technically the experts at that job. So if you're setting the fuse on the bomb, they're the experts.
Yeah.
If I go up to it, I read the PAM, I don't think I remember how to do it. They know how to do it.
Yeah.
I have to understand what they're doing, but I don't have to be the expert at that job. I have to be able to look at the big picture, put it all together, make sure that a good decision is being made, and then say those words, fire.
Yeah.
And when I say those words, fire, it's recorded in a log. And the computer says, this is the data we fired on. And if that round goes to the wrong place and hits the wrong thing, even if it's just out of bounds but no one's hurt, I'm legally responsible for that error. And that could mean jail time. It could mean a fine. It could mean, it depends on the situation, but it could mean a whole bunch of things. But not good for me. They're all bad.
I don't know whether I can ask this, but I know for people watching along that some people will say, and I've got many friends who are retired from the Army or from the Navy, and when we talk about these things, they're going to be saying, yeah, what about this, or say the headlines from a few years ago, and if you want to pass on it, you can just pass on it. So in CFB Wainwright. Live fire exercise goes wrong, and then CFB Suffield or Battis and live fire exercise goes wrong. In both cases, in one case with Suffield, a young British, I believe a private, was killed in it because a grenade landed too close to him. An RPG landed too close. Things like that. They're live fire exercises, but how real does that have to be? And when everything goes sideways, personally, how do you handle it? How do people handle it? And the reason why I bring this up is because I have minimal experience in working with our reservists or whatever military personnel with PTSD, and I see kind of what goes on, and I see the ghosts in the machine as they make their attempt to recover, and I see how it's handled, and these are incredibly life and belief shaking events. How do you deal with
That's a good question, because one of the things you stress about as a person in charge is, am I making the right call? And as officers, you and as leaders, it's not just officers, but anyone who's, because I may have the task assigned to me and I'm legally responsible, but I obviously have a lot of subordinates. They're also given responsibilities that I defer to them. I say, you're given this task, and I just supervise, right? So so even though it's legally my fault, there may be someone else that put the wrong data in, and so I'm going to do the investigation. We're going to find out where that error is, and ultimately, if it was my error, I was given bad data and I didn't detect it, and then I said, then it's my fault. That's a lot of weight, and a lot of weight of responsibility. So how do you deal with that when you make a mistake? Well, fortunately, I have made mistakes, but I haven't made mistakes that are so big that anyone has ever hurt, or that was considered to be within that, whoa, this is really bad. Like, this is really bad. It was like, okay, that was a technical error. Don't do that again. Okay, that's fine. But when you look at the training accidents that happen, You ask, well, how real does it have to be? Well, that kind of depends. Let me give you an analogy. When I was kickboxing, mixed martial arts training, you can do, practice your spinning armbar over and over and over again. The guy can give you some resistance a little bit over and over again. But when you're getting ready for your fight, at some point, not the week before, maybe not even 2 weeks before the fight, but you want to have a few weeks before the fight, you want to have that guy throwing bombs at your face while you're trying to spin for the armbar. Or because you want it to be, we call it being live. You want to have that feeling of real tension so that your mind can adjust to it. And when we study PTSD, and I'm not a PTSD expert, but I know when you read it, that a lot of times those issues are caused because expectations when they went in were different from what they were. The extreme trauma of the event creates some scarring that has to be dealt with. And the military, Canadian military, is doing a lot in the research to find out how do you then bring people back from those kind of things. And what we try to do is have a really good training system that prepares people mentally for that stuff. So when we talk about how live does it have to be, if you've never had a real bullet in your spout and you've got a fire team partner right beside you and he's moving and you're covering fire, if you've only fired blanks and you know that if you laser him, put your barrel onto your opponent and fire around, nothing's going to happen to him, that's a totally different experience when you're firing live bullets and you're doing movement with fire.
Yeah.
And then your confidence level in your ability to perform that task goes up dramatically. Then you feel, when you do it for real, it becomes a lot less. I've had, real 50 caliber round, right over my head, and it's just, if I jumped up, I couldn't have touched it, but it just made me feel that it was really real. Like we're really getting. If there's a mistake made, we could get hurt.
Well, because you have other things to consider too, and I don't know with people watching if they're familiar with this, but there is such a thing as hyper focus and tunnel vision, where maybe improper training or too much adrenaline, and they have incidences where the person just keeps firing because they're following the target, but as they're firing, friendlies come into the line.
Right.
They fire through the already advancing, soldiers and stuff, and people end up getting killed by friendly fire.
Right.
How much is that taken into consideration? Is that a concern? And once again, I realize we're kind of on touchy ground, but I think for anyone that's watching that has friends, family in the reservists or that are actually overseas, it's nice to know, right? And it's not to be all doom and gloom with it, but to me, I'm always fascinated how we've learned from our mistakes. And you talk about PTSD. We go back to shell shock in the First World War and in trench warfare, and this whole thing about being shell shocked and the severe cases where the human perceptual system is just overwhelmed literally by the concussive force of a bomb going off in the trench and how it echoes through the trench. And these guys we saw it in Private Ryan, where the guy was so stricken with fear until the very end that he literally couldn't move. And that is a real thing.
Right.
And then you talk about training for that. What have they learned from that? And then, kind of moving forward, because I have seen how it affects people. Some very good people I've dealt with both professionally and personally, and I'm amazed when we talk about events that happened, say back in the 90s or in the 2000s, and you can literally watch as they talk about it, and it's still there.
Right. It's very live.
Yeah.
And a lot of I've not deployed overseas, haven't been in someone shooting at me, but I've done domestic operations, and I've done obviously, but I have had experiences in my life that were very much life and death. You come on an accident scene. There's a screaming child. There's a dead man driving, and that's the father. It's very traumatic. And when you close your eyes a week later, it's so real. Oh. And if I were to start to describe that event to you, I could still create. It's in my mind so vivid, right? And so a lot of us we can empathize. Empathize with someone who says, "I was in war. I did that." Okay, well, I haven't done that, but I have been through a really jarring, traumatic experience of life and death, and something, or a really violent encounter. Those things really live in your mind. And back to your question about how do we prepare for that? You have to create live training, but you also have to create safe live training. So there's a bit of an illusion to it. So, for example, when we're shooting over top the heads of our friendly forces, there's certain rounds we can't use because they're not reliable. They might go off. They're reliable, but the way they're designed to function, we can't be sure, as sure as 100% sure they're not there.
Yeah, it's like firing a shotgun. you're aiming at the target, but the further that target is away, you go from being in the kill zone to the spray and injury zone. But the whole point of the shotgun is to maximize the damage.
That's maximize damage.
And so you have military, you have ordnance that do that.
Yeah, you bet. And we have, and when we shoot, whatever round we're shooting, we have what's called a safety template. So we have a board that says the margin of error is this, so we can plot that. And the most common errors are this. So if we're really, really restricted training environment, say, look, I got brand new guys on the guns. They're more likely to make a 10 mil, because it's easy on the dial, 10 mil. We don't use degrees in the Army, we use mils, which there's 6,400 mils in 360 degrees. So it's 17.8 mils per degree. So it's a lot more accurate, but still, they're more likely to make a by 10 increment error. And we have what's called charge bags. They're more likely to count the wrong charge bag. So let's imagine, what happens if they put one less or one more charge bag in the can than they're supposed to? What's the error we're going to get?
Yeah.
Okay, let's make a safety line. Well, on this map, if those errors are made, we can expect the round to fall here or there. We're not going to let anybody in that area.
Yeah.
Now, we don't go to war like that. But that's how we train, so that now I know that if I've worked with infantry or someone else and they're in that area, I get a nice warm fuzzy that I've made every possible consideration of the most likely errors. And then I have a safety officer on who's double checking data, who's making it. And so even though it's all live, we go very safe. And the same is true if we're doing advancing with firing on a range. We have range safety officers that it can get really hectic. You talked about the tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Well, that's because there's a battle between the limbic brain and the neocortex. And the neocortex is our logical part of our brain that's giving us direction. And the limbic brain is that part of our brain that all humans have, because we're all mammals. And it's the most dominant part. And humans communicate mostly by action, not by words. But our action is, in crisis of stress, is to freeze. That's it. People think, and in the Army, they've got a really terrible, they're getting way better at this, but we always say, that guy's no good, he just froze. Well, that's what he should do.
That's the automatic response.
That's what he should do. Because if I'm standing in front of a big, fearsome apex predator, they don't have as good a vision. They're going to rely on their smell, most likely. My movement's going to tell them exactly where I am and a good sense of how to catch me. The first thing a mammal needs to do, like us, who's facing an apex predator, is to freeze. And so our brain is a natural. Then our next one is to run. And then if that fails, then we fight. Yeah. Those are the order. And so when I'm faced with an extremely stressful situation, and it's not just, I'm in a firefight, it could be, I'm sitting there, I've got a computer here, I've got a signal here, I've got a radio, I've got all this data coming in, and I've got to make the decision on where that round's got to drop, and I got to do some real quick math in my head, and I'm the history guy, I'm not strong in math. Yeah. So I'm that extra stress, and then you add maybe an environment you're being assessed. You're under the gun. If you don't pass this, you're going to be out of the artillery. That type of stress. Well, what happens? I've got an apex predator standing in front of me, and my adrenaline surges, my mind becomes super focused, and my limbic brain takes over from my neocortex, but I need my neocortex to run. Yeah. Well, how do I beat that? Well, I beat it with, first of all, practicing that scenario over and over and over again until I till up the strategy. For me, and I'll tell what I do is I say these words: breathe, breathe. Yeah. Breathe. And because I can't think a word and say it without engaging my neocortex. And since my neocortex and my limbic brain cannot operate at the same time, by using a word, whatever the word is, could be apples, could be hopefully not a profane word, but whatever word you say that you have to think to say, that word takes me out of that limbic domination, and I can get back to my brain and start thinking. Yeah. And then, okay, I can figure this out. And then the other thing is maybe, Jack, I'm a little bit lost here. What do you think? What's our call here? I know it's an officer, you're supposed to always know the answers, but they will, sir, I think this, and you think about, you know what, I think that's the right call. We're doing that. You know, that's because humans, when we're in crisis, men especially, like to run away and go hide in our closet. Yeah. And we don't want to be seen. But it's one of the things we have to learn as leaders to be vulnerable, to accept that my peers are going to respect me more when I don't pretend I know all the answers. Yeah. And then I come to them with, this is our challenge, what do you suggest? Yeah. And they often know the technical parts of the job better than me, and then I can, that makes a reasonable, I'm going to go with that decision.
Yeah. On my program a lot, I'm talking about community, I'm talking about connection. And you brought up a very good point. When you're reaching out to your subordinates, you're actually building connections. Yes, you're in charge. Yes, you're the alpha. But at the same time, we get to see that human side of you. Now, let me kind of digress a little bit and let me ask your opinion on certain movies. And I think for military personnel, it must just drive you nuts. Thinking back, and I'm going to draw upon, have you seen Stripes?
Yeah.
Bill Murray, and everybody has, right? The U.S. military got involved in it because they knew how the movie was and what it was going to preach, and looking at Bill Murray and the guys that were involved in it, they knew that it would actually increase the sign up enrollment. It would increase, the number of troops they would be able to get, which it actually did. But one of the things about it that really reached out to people was the fact that Bill Murray was just a screw up. And who was the sergeant there? That there was.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
He gets blown up.
He gets blown up. Yeah. But there was never a connection between the two. There was always isolation, and you could see. Yes, they had to obey, but there was no connection. He had to lead them into war, but there's no connection. There's no passion. It's everything he says, and nobody else matters. I think we're in a day and age now where people really feel like they need to matter.
Right.
And do you find that has changed fundamentally in the last even 12 years or even 20 years?
And you know what? I love history, and there are some great books. You read books of what it was like for General Stewart when he was a major, he leads this battery. He was so good at his job that the Army said, even though you're a reserve officer, we're going to promote you, and we're going to make you in charge of a bigger unit. He eventually became a brigadier general. And he was loved by his men and a great leader, and loved by his men. Now, you can't, just because, like any job, you're not going to be loved by everybody, and you have tests. But what happens is when we're further away from conflict, we can get caught into, or further away from real application of our skills, whatever that is. And martial arts is another good example. If you never had to ever fight, you could do all these fancy katas and do all the fancy stuff that you can't lick your lips. You couldn't fight your way in a wet paper bag, but you look really cool.
Yeah.
But when someone throws a punch at you and really wants to beat the heck out of you, now things start to change, and maybe all the fluff and the silliness has to leave, and you have to focus on what really works, and then you strip away all the parts and you make it work. The Army's the same way. A lot of things before World War I, what they thought the wars would be like, turned out not even to be close. It was not even close. But also, there's an old saying, I don't know how true it is, but they say in the Canadian Army, more officers and sergeants died with bullets to the back of their head than they did to the front of the head. In other words, the first influx of officers were so horribly incompetent, and they followed and again, this is a saying, it's probably not near truth, but the idea was that these first crop of officers were this old guard, Victorian style leadership where you are going to obey me because the Queen says I'm in charge, and by God, I'll put a gun to your head if you don't. That leadership style was the myth of leadership. Maybe that's everyone thought that's how I had to lead. But it became very apparent in the first weeks, months of actual conflict. First of all, most of those guys...
we're talking not the Prussian, but the Persian War, but
this is World War I. Canadians on the front in France, and when they start, first of all, a lot of those officers and leaders die right off the bat. They're the first to die. They lead, they die. And
this is for history personnel and everything, people watching, history buffs. It's before trench warfare.
Well, when Canada finally gets in, the trenches are well established.
Okay. That kind of clarifies.
Yeah. So the trenches are there, but they have to lead very dire circumstances. Then it used to be the officers came very structured environment. They were the elites of the community. But in Canada, we don't have aristocracy, so pretty much you're the school teacher, where you're the officer. You run a shop, well, you're the officer. You have a little bit of that, you're the officer. Okay, that's how they chose their officers. Yeah. But still, there was a lot of people pretending to be the Victorian type image, rather than being really, truly great officers. And that changes by the end of the first year of the war, because first of all, the old guys are dead for one reason or other. I mean, they didn't trust their men, and accidentally a bullet went off. Well, I suspect that happened very rarely. I think the reality was they were killed, or they said their troops. And there's examples of this. Great books, the Campus Scottish Regiment, and how they basically went to over the head of the officer and said, "Sir, this man is incompetent. You must get rid of him." And off he goes. He's now doing something else back in Canada. And these good people who learn the job very quickly, these creative, resourceful people who are the natural, what we call officers, the adults in the room. The people that are going to make make the good decision, make a lot of crazy ideas. We're going to try to make the one that's reasonable. And those guys led. Now, how did they lead? They led, and we follow this maxim. We say mission, troops, self. That's our order of priority of tasks. So mission number one. Next thing is our troops, and then before we ever take care of ourselves.
So mission being you all have a common goal. We all know that we need to go from point A to point B. Yeah. We've got 100 feet of trenches to cover, and our goal is to get there.
Right.
That's where the Germans are. That's where
Yep.
they're most fortified. We need to gain this 100 feet back before Christmas Day.
Right. So that would be your assigned task, your mission. And so all the troops know we're all invested in this. And a good leader, we talk about that in the Canadian military a lot, is called transformational leadership. And the idea is, yes, I have positional leadership. Captain Meehan, second in command of the battery, says do this. Okay. Well, that's your lowest level of motivation.
Yeah.
Right? They haven't bought into it. But Captain Meehan, who's in charge, says, all right, boys, girls, this is what we got to do. We've been tasked with this. I think this is the best way, but I'm not sure. What do you think? Well, sir, I think did you know we had this, and did you know we could do that? And actually, we could set up this over there and get. Oh, well, that's a really good suggestion. Let's write all that down. Okay, here's our plan. And then now they've all bought into it. And they lended their expertise. They gave me the information I needed to make a sound decision.
Yeah.
And now we're all invested in it, and we all believe in it. And most importantly, I'm going to be dead within the first couple of minutes. The sergeant in charge of my troop, specifically that task, maybe I got a couple of sergeants, they're going to be dead right away too. I got to make sure the gunner, the lowliest guy, knows his job, do his training, and knows where that mission is. And there's great examples. The 20th Field Battery in World War II became part of the anti-tank regiment. When they fought in World War II, a great story, they had a 17-pounder anti-tank gun. And while the officer was doing a kind of reconnaissance of the area where to position, they saw 4 German Panther tanks, which are some of the best tanks of the war. And they're approaching, and he wanted to immediately get his guns in position, but there was no time. So he got one gun, one troop of guns they parked in behind a Sherman tank that was already hit and burning. But sometimes a tank can be burning but still engaging. So they hid the gun on the side, and they started engaging these tanks. One anti-tank gun, which is a suicide. Well, they took up 2 tanks before the Germans figured out, hey, that dead tank is alive. And so they started shooting at it. And of course, they realized there's an anti-tank gun in there. And they get, finally, the Canadians get the third tank. These Lethbridge gunners get the third tank. But by that time, they've been hit so badly, there's only one gunner left. That's it. Everyone else is too wounded to participate. It's a 3-man operation, but he did all 3 jobs, even though he's wounded, loaded around, fired, and killed the last tank. Now that's an example of mission first.
Yeah.
Right? The mission was first, more important than anything. And then we got to get those 4 tanks stopped. And then the next step was he's going to take care of his peers, and then last of all, you're going to take care of yourself. And that is, we talk about service. This is one of the things I love about the military is that you're put under stressful circumstances, stressful training environments, very, very stressful. If you believe it's important, you're going to invest your emotion and effort, and it's going to become stressful. And so you got to deal with the fact, here I am at the time in my 40s going through all these really tough courses. And I'm in a course right now that's really tough actually, but it gets really stressful. And I was used to this little cubicle world where I was a master of my domain, and now I'm just out of high school again, being thrown into a zoo of things I don't understand. I got to make sense of it, and I got to become good at it. And
in your 40s, no less.
Right.
And we all know as we get older, one of the reasons why kids when they're 1, 2, 3, 5 years of age, they take on 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 languages, no problem whatsoever. It's because we learn so much better at a young age. So
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a tremendous compliment to you that at that age you're taking on all these things and learning them at that level. That's spectacular.
Well, and one of the things I didn't know about artillery, because you think, well, it's the math. Well, the math has actually turned out to be the easiest part. The math is really simple. It's artillery math, which is meant to be. We're going to assume you're not very good at math, and so here's a trigonometry table that tells you all your pre-calculations. You just have to know how far you want to go, and it's going to tell you your elevation and what you charge. Oh, that's great. And then you've got a computer that does it too, like say an app. It's like a little program. It tells you all that. You just have to double check the data. So that's actually not the hard part. The hard part is artillery speaks its own language, and it's called the language of fire control. And it consists of words, phrases, rules, and conventions which have specific meaning and to result in some definite actions at the guns, which you can tell is a memorized thing. We have to know all that.
Yeah.
And so when you memorize this language, you have to speak it. And you've got 4 radios going if you're all hopping battery, and you've got to speak this language, and it's not your first language. And when you're in your 40s trying to pick up another language, you feel like a mental midget. You feel like I could pass the test. It's like I can do my. I could say my alphabet, no problem. Now pick any letter randomly and say the one before and the one after. Most of us have to go up and down and figure it out. Well, when you're fluent in a language, you don't have to think and convert back to English. Where you go like, well, okay, he wants this. What are the words I say to give him that? How do I? And because we want to be, every moment on the radio is one more moment the enemy picks up your radio signal and shoots you. So it's, you got to be quick, and we want that gunfire quick, not to take time while I sit there and explain to my, great education. I'll just go on for hours explaining what I want, and in fact, no, I need it in like 3 words. If you can give it to me in 3 words, can you describe exactly what you want? And so artillery is all about that, and that new language is what I found the most challenging. And finding to develop the plasticity of the brain. Well, there are drugs that are coming out. I know they can do that, but for all the rest of us, mere mortals, without the benefits of medical science, it would be to just keep practicing, keep doing it. And that's what I loved about the Army, is that I feel like this, climbing a tall ladder, whatever your fear is, you feel like, I'm really scared here. I'm really scared. I got to deal with this. And that challenge is what makes you feel alive. It makes you forget that somehow I'm closer to 100 than I am to 1. Yeah. And physically, knowing that I've got to pass the physical fitness test, and I'm a leader, so I don't want my troops to do any better than me. I'm very competitive in that, so I want to be. Yeah. Now I can honestly say, in my 40s, there was no one in the battery that could beat me. In the 50s, I got to admit that's not really. I'm starting to decline. But I'm certainly not going to be the guy in the bottom third on the physical fitness side. And so I'm being challenged physically, challenged mentally, and then we talked about the limbic brain, the neocortex. But one of the great things about human beings, you want to de-stress your life, serve others. Yeah, that's the number one way to serve others. So, and I tell my kids this: we serve our family, we serve our community, and we serve our country. And if we put our focus on service, we avoid a lot of the depression and mental health issues that come with being completely self-obsessed. Yeah. And the military, it is all not just the bigger. I'm serving my country. No, we don't think that at all. I mean, we love our country, we believe in it, but really we serve each other. Yeah. Remember we talk about mission, right? Yeah. That's the serving the higher cause. But most importantly, it's my fire team partner, it's my debt, it's my battery, or my company. And it's always that band of brothers. You talk about that movie, but that's a great movie. It really hits hard with what it was like, that fraternity that forms, and it's people say, what's all men club? Well, I serve lots of women, and I tell you, it's the women are. You can't already tell a man or woman in this uniform. We all just serve, and we use our brains and we use our brawn when needed. But we're a technology army. We use our brains. We use our we all of us as a team. We do it, and that sense of community and that sense of serving each other. It's nothing better than you come after you've been up for 18 hours straight. You go to your tent, and your fire team partner put out your sleeping bag for you. As their last thought before they dragged their ass through sleep, they thought about you before they thought about their sleep. Wow! And it's a real. That's just a normal thing the Army guys do for each other. Yeah. And Army guys and gals, that's what we do. And that when you feel a part of that, it's hard to explain to other people. Well, the Army really sucks sometimes. It's like minus 40, and it's brutal day out there.
Or you're helping out with flood relief.
You're helping out, and
it's wet.
And it's wet, and you're tired, and you got an idea what to do, but you're dealing with all these other agencies, and they don't think you should be doing it that way, and you're just sitting on your hands. You're frustrated, and you're tired, and on it goes. But when you serve with your peers, one of the great things about Stripes, that movie, is that it really teaches the most important lesson about serving in the military: have a sense of humor. Yeah. When you stop laughing at stuff, then you know you got a problem. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, it's been fantastic having you on the show, and I tell you, you've been a great inspiration. Where can people go to find out more information? What's the website?
Yeah, you bet.
And locally, if they want to experience what you're talking about, where can they go?
So the 20th Independent Field Battery is at the Lethbridge Army, which is at the airport. Mm-hmm. So on Wednesday nights they have open night there. You can go there and just buzz the thing.
So tomorrow night?
Yep, tomorrow night you can go there. You can go check out and see what they're doing. They've got recruiters there that'll talk to you. You can dial, I think it's 310 Army, and they'll put you through to the recruiter. You can go and just Google Canadian Army, and they'll be full-time, part-time. We're part-time soldiers, but you can also be full-time. And then you can get in on the journey. And we're very open and inclusive military. We have people of all races, all color, we don't bias towards gender. It's we're here to serve. Well, we have a job to do. We serve together. We merry band, and band of brothers and sisters and everything in between, and we get a job done, and it's a wonderful experience to serve your country. And I don't mean that in just as a platitude. I mean that as a real thing, that real feeling of service, that warm fuzzy. People, how much do you make in the Army? I have no idea. I get paid. I like to pay when I get it. I'm not in it for the money. I have a great job.
Yeah.
There's some people that are in the money. Good for them. Nothing wrong with that. But for me, and for a lot of people my age who come in later, we're there to do something bigger than us.
Yeah.
And that's what we get a sense to do, and it's a privilege to serve.
Once again, we're talking about another thing. That's connection.
Yeah.
You are connected. I thank you very much. Thank you for your service, and thank you very much for just sharing that. I must say, I am truly, my eyes have been opened and truly inspired by what you've had to say with that. Captain Rob Meehan and Robert Meehan. And so if you're interested, Canadian Armed Forces Online, and you can also go out to what's the building called out at the airport?
Vimy Ridge Armories.
Vimy Ridge Armories out at the airport. Wednesday night is their open night. Rob, thank you very much for joining us. You guys have yourself an amazing day. Stay inspired. Serve. Connect. You're amazing. Thank you.